Cool intro sound.
Alright, how's it going guys? AlphaYGO back at it again, and today we got the long-awaited DD deck profile post-September ban list, utilizing the new PK and Sacred Beast stuff. Now, just a couple disclaimers before we start. The structure of this video will be a little bit different than usual. As you can see on the screen, I've already put everything out. There's no delay, you just kind of get to see everything. Well, except for these parts right here, but this is just me displaying some flex spots, so different options that you can do to fill in these spots, whatever. Yeah, just a couple things. So one, this is just a rough draft, so you don't have to take this list too literally, but we will just be doing a quick rundown of the list here, and then I'll be doing a more in-depth breakdown afterwards. And of course, the demo is already posted, so you can kind of see what this deck is aiming to do, what it's trying to do, and kind of get an idea if you even want to really play this. This is just a bare bone list of what the deck could look like, just a skeleton. So without further ado, let's just break it down real quick. So 3 Kepler, 3 Copernicus, I'll get into a bit about 3 Copernicus later, 3 Ragnarok, 2 Thomas, 3 Slime, 3 Lamia, 3 Neko, that's pretty standard. 1 DD Ghost, as you can see we don't run Apocalypse, which I'll get into a bit later. 3 Dark Beckoning Beast with the 1 Chaos Summoning Beast, I believe that's what their names are. 2 of the PK monsters plus the Buster Destruction Sword, 3 Gate plus the Swan King, 3 of the Sacred Beast Gate, funny enough, and 3 other. That's pretty standard. 1 called, a bit of an interesting topic right now. And Foolish, 1 for 1, very standard in this deck. 1 for 1 is also an interesting point that I like to talk about. And 2 Fog Blade, just to complete the obvious synergy of the deck. As for the extra deck, we have 1 Linkuriboh, 1 Bardiche, 1 Needle Fiber. Needle Fiber is not even mandatory in this list, it depends on how you want to shape your extra deck. The Linkuriboh and Bardiche is all you need for the PK part, because the Sacred Beast engine plus any of the 0/0 Savants just makes such a big swing of advantage. You can make these very easily. 1 Union Carrier, because Buster Log, you don't have to run this obviously, because it's just a generic Link 2, and you can kind of see what we're going to be doing with the extra options later on. And of course, following that, we have just the more standard lineup. We have 1 High King Genghis, 2 Low Genghis, just the more traditional stuff. 1 Alexander, 1 Siegfried, 1 Borolo Savage. Borolo Savage obviously can be switched out for other level 8 synchros, Crystal Wing, but Borolo Savage is also very strong. So, and 1 Hope Harbinger / rank 8. That rank 8 we chose is this one because it's just an all around really good strong one. And yeah, we do have 4 spots here that I like to talk about, what we could throw in, different ways you can go approach the deck. And of course, the different flex spots don't have to be set in stone with the options. Even this main deck isn't even perfect, but it's more or less what you're aiming for when you're trying to put something like this together. So right here we have a quick breakdown of the deck composition. Something that I think is just worth mentioning is I believe this deck is really powerful because of its level of consistency and its powerful plays. The reason why we run the Sacred Beast engine is because it helps solve some of the problems within the deck. Obviously DD has been power crept over time, so it's a bit difficult for it to keep up with the current times. So to combat that, we do have to play other things to kind of boost its power. So in this case, the reason why we run this is because your deck is really fragile to hand traps. Like, it's incredibly fragile. There's no way to really play around it easily. Everything's a hard once per turn. Basically, you need specific pieces. All your searches are incredibly vulnerable to a lot of interaction. So essentially what we're doing is you're throwing in this engine over here, the Sacred Beast engine, as a starter engine, because either your opponent will hand trap this and all you lose out are your Fog Blades, or they're just gonna save their hand traps for the DD portion, but you're gonna end on 2 Fog Blades. So either way, you're gonna get out with something, because as you might see in the combo video, so 1 of these plus something like Kepler is such a gigantic swing and advantage. You get 2 Fog Blades plus your Bardiche, and you still haven't used any of your combo pieces in your hand. So it's incredibly powerful. And as you can see in the list, we're basically running 6 copies of Dark Beckoning Beast, which is very powerful. 3 Kepler and 3 Copernicus. Copernicus here is interesting because even before, I never even really liked running it at 3, because it's the ideal number for normal summons is around 5. So having 6 was already weird. And in this deck, you're having essentially 12 normal summons, it seems like, but it's not actually the case in this deck because Copernicus is technically an extender. Because of your Soul Slime, because of your extra deck, the way you can recur it back very easy, and it becomes an extender. And the same thing with Kepler in this case now, because Dark Beckoning Beast 1 can let you normal summon them for free, or of course you see in the combo with the Gate, you can basically special it back out from the grave. which is very powerful. And if you're curious of how that works, you can just go check out my video right before this one. I can even leave a link somewhere just to make it easier for you guys. But essentially, the cohesion of these first couple cards is incredibly powerful, obviously besides the Garnet, but it's still very powerful as it is, and it nets a lot of advantage. And obviously after that we have 3 Swirl, 3 Lightning, and 3 Necro Slime. Very standard. Of course, Necro Slime, there's a debate of cutting it down to 2. 3 Ragnarok, 2 Thomas. This is just your standard like level 8 package. Very powerful extenders, and you know, still worth playing in my opinion. And obviously with this you can argue that like you can run Desires. I just don't like Desires, so that's why I don't run it. You know, a bit of a personal bias, but it's still a very powerful card in this situation. But I wouldn't fully say it's okay because of the next couple cards we're going to talk about. But yeah, 3 Alert, you know, consistency as always. 2 PK monsters plus the Fog Blades, 1 Destruction Sword, and 1 DD Ghost, kind of as our quote-unquote Garnets. These are the cards you don't really want to see in your hand because you're going to pull them all out of the deck eventually. DD Ghost is half and half depending if you want to run Fiber, but all of these cards you definitely don't want to see them, and you'd rather just pull them out of your deck through your combo for maximum advantage. But of course the power that they bring, like, you know, no extra deck, free negates, you can't complain about it at all. And of course when we see DD Ghost here, you might think, oh, why don't you run Chaos Apocalypse? Chaos Apocalypse became very popular in the DD list because Gilgamesh became a thing. But as you can see with this deck, not only do we have our natural like DD contracts that take up our back row, we have Gate, Fog Blades, Buster Lock, and as you saw in the extra deck of Warlord Savage, so that means our back row is going to be filled up with a lot of cards regardless. And Gilgamesh makes you put in 2 scales. It doesn't even let you put up to 1 scale, it has to be 2 scales, so that means like it's a bit of a double-edged sword in that situation. So I opted out for that card, and you really don't need it for this list. But moving on, we do have 1 Swamp King, very standard. 1 Call Beggar, this is very weird, it's very sacky now, but I feel like this deck really needs it, unfortunately. I think if we get Crossout Designator or another card moving forward, we can maybe change that up, but for the most part, Call Beggar is very important. 1 Foolish, this is just very standard. I would say the power of this card in this list isn't as amazing, but it's still pretty okay because you can send some unique things off like PKs or whatever. 1 for 1 I'm starting to not like in any deck usually because everyone, almost in every format, in some way or some capacity is running Ash, and this card can just make your mediocre hand unplayable just because it's the only good starter you have, and then they Ash it and then it's just game over, and you don't really need it in this deck. I think this deck is as consistent as is, but 1 for 1 is a bit of a interesting topic. And of course moving forward, we do have the several plus options that we have. So obviously these aren't set in stone, you can mix and match these as you like, but I'm just kind of breaking down the different strategies and viewpoints that you can go about. So the first option is the Link Cross. Obviously Link Cross is very powerful with Needle Fiber that can net you things like Formless Synchron and Metal Marcher. You know, Formless Synchron is already nice because of draw, but you can even pull this off with Needle Fiber, something on your opponent's turn, link away with Genghis for level 8 Synchro. You can link it one of your level 8s into the Stardust level 10 guy, the one that pops a bunch of things. So there's a lot of cool neat tricks you can do with this, and of course Herald is very powerful as a floodgate and a negate. The second option is something I think is actually very underrated, and it's just link spam or link climbing. The reason I say this is because even if your deck pumps out a lot of big monsters, something like Access Code Talker or even Borlosaur that we all have over here is very potent for, you know, just ending games right there. You don't really want to go into a grind game. Obviously we kind of cater this to having a bit of a grind game, but you know, it's not that amazing. But what I really like about this is it kind of synergizes with the Secret Beast engine even better when you're made to go second. So you can make Link Karibo, and you can use your 2 monsters to go into Phoenix to pitch a card, pop, draw a card, then just use Link Karibo, Phoenix into Unicorn, spin another card, and if you have another extender you can just go straight into Access Code. And I'm like, okay, so our initial combo that's usually meant to go straight into Bardiche is now very viable for just popping multiple cards, which is very powerful. And IP is also just there because this is kind of in conjunction to the Apollo right here, but making IP as your generic Link 2 instead of Union Cure is an option. So that is one I would consider. The next one I would say is kind of substitutes. So for example, Crystal Ming is a good substitute for one of your level 8 synchros. I would still keep Siegfried, ironically, because Siegfried procs your other DD monsters and it's still a very powerful monster as is. Crystal Ming is, honestly, it's not as powerful as Warlord Savage, but you do have the option of making all of them, ironically. One downside of Warlord Savage in this deck is because you're running so many things that stay in the back row, Like if you have 2 Fogways, extra deck lock, and 2 gates, then you don't have space for an equip for Borolo Savage, which is quite detrimental. So you do have to take that into consideration when you're playing the deck. The other thing is like D-Arc. This is really good because it can just help you make shortcuts in the combos. Like you don't have to climb up with your DD monsters. You can go straight into D-Arc, use a Lamia, and make a level 8. Cross Sheep, which is notoriously very powerful in this deck. Again, you can fit this in very easily and very convincingly along with Apollo, because Apollo is also a very great monster in this deck. But it kind of just depends on, again, the direction you wanted to take the deck. To reiterate, you don't have to use these 3 options as is. You can mix and match them as you like. And of course, the remaining cards is AlphaYGO. AlphaYGO is just very powerful. If at the very least, I will put this in the side. This card can come out of left field and just swing back advantage incredibly hard. Whether you would play this in the main deck, again, depends on what you're prioritizing in the rest of your extra deck. I think Brawl Sword is just another alternative to Access Code. The problem with access code here is, if you just look at all the extra deck monsters here, the only diverse attributes we have are light, dark, maybe a water, and I think Cross Sheep is an earth. So like at the very most, you only have those. So this doesn't pop too many cards. It gets to pop a couple. But Borolo Sword is like actually OTK machine, so you kind of get to choose between. And also Borolo Sword is much cheaper than access code, so that's also a very important part. The reason obviously access code is over here is because Unicorn can straight go into access code with 1 monster, but you need a little bit more setup for Borolo Sword. So that's the reason I left it over here. And of course we have the 1 Gilgamesh. I think Gilgamesh doesn't have a really solid place in this deck because of the previous problems I mentioned in regards to the back row space, but it's still a very flexible card. You can't always guarantee that you're gonna be filling up your back row with all the things you want. So maybe Gilgamesh does have a home in it, but at the moment I'd say it's more of an option more than a mandatory piece in your deck. And of course, however way you want to structure your extra deck, it can dictate the main deck. This isn't set in stone for all of these. You can cater to better suit your extra deck. But for the most part, this is kind of the gist of what the deck and strategy could look like. It's a very fun list. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys later.